Today's case is truly a very upsetting case that has shocked and horrified the nation. A case that is so vile and disgusting in every way imaginable that where the only survivor was an 8-year-old little boy who was then forced to testify against his father after his 9-year-old sister and his mother's lives were senselessly taken in just a horrific way. Not only did this poor little boy testify against his father, but he had to also be cross-examined by him as well. This is a wild one, guys. So get ready. My name is Elise. This is 10 to Life, and let's dive right in. Hey guys, I'm going to take you with me along my night routine journey because I just gotta share it with you guys. I've never slept well. God's to honest truth, I always have a very hard time sleeping, but the last 6 months have been a game changer for me, and I'm gonna tell you how because I do have a hidden secret. Now let me just say, the reason that it is so important that you get good sleep, I'm sure you guys already know, but it's better moods, it's more energy, it's staying more focused, so many different things, and that's something I was struggling with, again, until I found Beam Dream. Fun fact, my husband actually got me on this, and you can see it's literally empty, and I'm about to crack open this new bag. I've been taking it now every night before bed for about 6 months now. I've gotten my sister-in-law on it, all my friends on it, and I'm gonna break down for you what it is because if you have a hard time sleeping, you're gonna be obsessed with it just like I am. And because I'm so obsessed with it, when they asked me to do a partnership with them, I was beyond thrilled. I was like, yes, send me all of it. Because again, look, this bag is empty because I use it all the time. So long story short, let me tell you what Dream is all about. So it is a sleep tea and it comes in a bunch of different flavors. My favorite one is this one, which is the caramel. It's sea salt caramel or caramel, however you say it, but it really just tastes literally like hot chocolate. It has melatonin in it. It has magnesium in it. It has CBD in it, but no THC. It's been triple lab checked. And it literally just is like a wave over you and puts you to sleep. It is the best. But what I love the most about it is when you wake up, you do not feel drowsy at all like you would normally if you take melatonin. So for me, when I wake up at 5 in the morning, because I've got kids, I've got shit I gotta do, I'm not drowsy. It is perfect and I still get a great night's sleep. You just do 1 scoop in your mug. You can see kind of here for reference. Then you take your hot water to mix it in and boom, bam, bam. Oh God, look, I'm spilling. So what I usually do is I will make this tea about 30 minutes before I want to be asleep. So for me, that's between 8 and 8:30 is my sweet spot of when I won't make this any later usually because I want to be out asleep by 9. I know, I'm really old. So here we go. We're just gonna mix it. Keep the tiny humans alive. I do that by obviously getting enough sleep so that I'm not a cranky disaster. Oh my God, that was really hot. I need to let it cool down. But guys, it's so good. Like I said, I swear, I've already gotten my sister-in-law hooked, so many friends hooked that now just depend on it. It is so, so good. And because now Beam is a official partner of the 10 to Life channel, which I'm so excited, they are hooking you up. All you have to do is click the link in my description or go to their website and use my code 10 to Life. You will get 35% off your first order and then 20% off every future order after that. Discount for life. And guys, you're probably gonna order a new bag every single month like I do because you're gonna be so hooked and you're gonna love it. Plus, when you subscribe to Dream Powder, you will receive a free frother with your first order. And you can pause, skip, or cancel anytime so there's no risk. But trust me, you are not going to want to cancel because, like I said, you are going to love it and it is going to be a game changer. Try it, trust me, thank me later. And I'm out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5.
Better believe it. If you think I'm here to play around with y'all, God damn it, I'm not.
All right, Mr.
Mr. O'Neill.
34-year-old Ronnie O'Neill III was born on July 27, 1988. He is a lifetime Florida resident who primarily lived in the Tampa area. Growing up, he faced the challenge of not knowing his biological father, who struggled greatly with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Later on in his adult years, he was fortunate enough to meet him. Ronnie's upbringing was influenced by his stepfather, Billy Smith, and also his brother, Alonson Kelly, with whom he shared a very close bond with. Being raised in a Christian household, he actively participated in his local church, showcasing his musical talents as a member of the church choir. There wasn't much instability in Ronnie's home life, and he enjoyed a relatively fortunate upbringing. However, the tranquility was shattered when he and his brother, Alonson, fell victim to violence inflicted by a family member. However, despite the challenging circumstances, Ronnie refused to be defined by his past. He attended East Bay High School, where he struggled with keeping his grades up and actively participated in extracurricular activities. Ronnie showcased his athleticism as a football player and demonstrated his commitment to service by joining the Reserve Officer Training Corps, also known as the ROTC. Following his graduation, he set his sights on a military career and attempted to join the U.S. Marines. Unfortunately, he faced multiple setbacks as he struggled to pass the entrance exam. When Ronnie's aspirations of joining the Marines didn't pan out, he redirected his focus toward another passion of his, music, where he began writing hip-hop tracks. Ronnie crossed paths with Kenyatta Barron, and their connection blossomed into a romantic relationship. In 2009, their daughter Ronivia entered the world. However, Ronivia was born with cerebral palsy and later diagnosed with severe autism. These conditions presented obvious obstacles for their daughter, as she was nonverbal but still found a means of communication through sign language. Additionally, Ronivia faced mobility challenges, but her family ensured that she had a wheelchair whenever needed. 1 year later, the couple brought a baby boy into the world, Ronnie O'Neill IV. But we will be referring to him as Little Ronnie, since that is what everybody in his family called him. The siblings were very close in age and were even closer in relationship. It's said that Little Ronnie even had a special way of communicating with his sister Ronivia. In 2016, Ronnie and Kenyatta split up, and Ronnie got a new girlfriend and had another son as well later that year. In 2017, Ronnie's life flashed before his eyes when he was the victim in a random drive-by shooting that hospitalized him. His injuries were so significant that his heart stopped beating several times during surgery. Upon his discharge, neither his girlfriend at the time nor his family members would allow him to stay with them to recover, out of fear. Would he be attacked again? However, Kenyatta felt bad for Ronnie and offered her home to help him, despite her mother begging her not to. Her mother stated that Kenyatta was on such a good path at this point, providing for her family while also attending college classes. She didn't want Ronnie to come in and ruin all of that for her. And as you can imagine, it wasn't really smooth sailing. At one point, Kenyatta had to call the police because Ronnie had thrown a wrench at her car window, all because she wouldn't allow him to take her car. There were many other instances similar to this that happened over time. During this time, Ronnie developed an avid interest in Islam and even publicly identified himself as a member of the Nation of Islam on his Facebook page. On the fateful night of March 18, 2018, in Riverview, Florida, the Hillsborough Sheriff's Office received a very chilling 911 call. At precisely 11:43 p.m., an unknown woman reached out for help.
What's the address of the emergency, ma'am? What's the address of your
I'm
emergency?
shot. Help me, please.
What's your address?
Please,
What's your address,
whoever
ma'am?
shot me, help me, please. He shot me.
Where? Ma'am, hello, ma'am. All right. Ma'am, hello. Hello.
Oh, no, this one fucked up fuck thing at this ass, nigga. Not. Right now, come out here and help me kill this bitch.
During the haunting 911 call that night, the unknown woman uttered a heart-wrenching apology as she addressed a person named Ronnie. However, the call abruptly ended with a blood-curdling scream, leaving dispatchers and law enforcement extremely alarmed, to say the least. Adding to the unsettling nature of the situation, a man's voice could be faintly heard in the background, uttering the phrase, Allah Akbar, a declaration in Arabic that translates to, God is the greatest. 8 minutes later, at around 11:51 p.m., the emergency operators received a second distressing 911 call. This time, it was from a man who claimed to have been attacked by what he referred to as white demons.
What is your emergency?
Hey, I just been attacked by some white demons inside, and she tried to kill me. And
What's the address?
Huh?
What's the address of the emergency? Try to attack you?
Yes. She did. She tried to kill me.
He went on to accuse Kenyatta Barron of attempting to take his life and forcing him to defend himself. With a sense of urgency, he provided the dispatcher with physical address where the incident had unfolded, 13248 Pike Lake Drive in Riverside, Florida. While Kenyatta was on the line with 911, James Gray Jr. was visiting his fiancée, the couple's next-door neighbor, when he suddenly heard screaming and loud banging. James told his fiancée and her daughter to stay inside the home and call 911 while he went to go check out what was going on. When he stepped outside, he saw Kenyatta's front door open, smoke and blood spatter along the walls in the entryway of the home. He saw Kenyatta on the ground lying face down and motionless, with Ronnie standing over her. He stated that Ronnie began shouting, "You don't understand." James tried to get Ronnie to back away as Ronnie continued to yell Allah Akbar repeatedly over and over again. Upon receiving the 911 call, Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies swiftly responded to the scene, and they were met with a gruesome sight. In the driveway of a neighboring house, they discovered a female victim who had endured several severe physical injuries, accompanied by the telltale signs of an apparent gunshot wound. As they carefully surveyed the area, their attention was drawn to a heavily damaged shotgun that was discarded on the ground nearby. Come to find out, Ronnie had shot Kenyatta in her shoulder before beating her to a pulp with the butt of the shotgun. She sustained 15 lacerations to her head, between 6 and 7 skull fractures, a fractured jaw, fractured facial bones, and several fractures at the base of her skull. And she was missing several teeth. This was a brutal beating. Recognizing the urgent need for medical attention, the deputies promptly administered first aid to Kenyatta, while they waited until EMS crews arrived at the scene. But she later died of a brain hemorrhage due to the blunt force trauma. As more officers approached the residence, their attention was drawn to what seemed to be a fire raging inside. With a sense of urgency, they made their way through the front door, but they were halted when the garage door unexpectedly opened, revealing a man later identified as Ronnie O'Neill. He emerged from the garage, covered in blood spatter, and began walking toward the officers, undeterred by their presence. Despite repeated commands to stop and get on the ground, Ronnie didn't listen, so the officers resorted to deploying tasers. They swiftly took control of the situation, placing Ronnie inside a patrol car, all while he continued to repeatedly yell, Allah Akbar. He also called Kenyatta the devil and stated that the kids were the devil's kids. Hillsborough County Fire Rescue swiftly took action to enter the residence to see if anyone else was inside, and that was when a young boy emerged from the home, covered in blood from head to toe, while holding in his organs, revealing himself to be Ronnie O'Neill IV, the 9-year-old son of the couple. It became distressingly evident that the young boy had suffered severe injuries. 30% of his body was covered in burns, gasoline, and he had a gash in his torso revealing his intestines. Overwhelmed and in pain, he bravely communicated to the responding officer, "My father shot my mother." Recognizing the urgency of the situation, medics immediately transported little Ronnie to the hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery, fighting for his life. As the firefighters continued their efforts to put out the fire, they were literally slipping in puddles of blood. The flames were successfully extinguished, but the scene that awaited them was a nightmare of unspeakable violence. In the mother's bedroom, they made the devastating discovery of the lifeless body of the couple's 9-year-old daughter, Ronnie. The young girl had suffered unimaginable atrocities, displaying signs of being stabbed and burned. The autopsy report stated that she suffered penetrating sharp and deep blade wounds to the head, neck, and torso, and also sustained several fractures to her foot and skull. Her father, who was supposed to love, protect, and nurture her, had used a hatchet to kill her. Now, as you could imagine, the community was beyond shocked by this. Ronnie was booked and charged with resisting arrest, arson, 2 counts of first-degree murder, and 1 count of attempted first-degree murder. After the state attorney's office announced their intention to seek the death penalty in May of 2018, his competency to stand trial was called into question. In October of the same year, he was deemed not competent to stand trial, and his parental rights to little Ronnie were terminated in December of 2018. However, his competency status changed in 2019. The Department of Children and Families assessed him in May 2019, and they concluded that he was competent to proceed and no longer required involuntary commitment. Consequently, the judge ruled in June 2019 that Ronnie was competent to stand trial. However, the jury selection process did not commence until years later, in June 2021, after many delays due to COVID. Justice for the victims was not served until 3 long years later, in 2021, when Ronnie finally stood at trial. During the proceedings, Ronnie himself made a statement on June 8, 2021, expressing his acceptance of the death penalty. He stated that if someone had committed such crimes, they deserved to be sentenced to death. But the courtroom drama was far from over, as Ronnie had a plan to exert control over the proceedings. Surprisingly, he made the audacious decision to dismiss his attorneys and represent himself. The judge carefully assessed his capability to do so, going through the necessary procedures, and much to the disbelief of many, Ronnie was granted permission to proceed as his own legal counsel. The right to self-representation in a criminal case is protected by the 6th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which grants individuals the right to act as their own legal counsel if they wish. This principle is commonly referred to as pro se representation. However, the right to self-representation is not absolute, and it may be subject to certain limitation imposed by the court. Courts typically conduct an assessment to ensure that the defendant is competent to waive their right to counsel and proceed with self-representation. Factors considered may include the defendant's understanding of the charges, the complexity of the legal proceedings, their ability to present a coherent defense, and any potential risks associated with self-representation, which in Ronnie's case, he passed. Abraham Lincoln once said, "A man who defends himself has a fool for a client." Ronnie put on quite the show for his opening statement in his murder trial.
Fictitious government you ever seen. By the time it's all said and done, you will see who is the mass murderers. In Tampa Bay, the state of Florida. You will know why what occurred on March 18, 2018 occurred. The evidence is going to show that I called 911 during Kenyatta Barron's 911 call. But all of a sudden, it ends up after I called Kenyatta, after Kenyatta Barron's call was made. Now I'm calling 911. But originally, I called 911 without even knowing she called 911 during her call. But the evidence is going to show that your representatives and law enforcement, local law enforcement, wanted to make it seem like I'm some kind of menace to society. And I ran after killing Kenyatta Barron, knowing that authority was on the way to kill my own children. I wonder why I would do something like that for no reason. And I'm standing here competent as can be, representing myself today.
The theatrical display goes on for 30 minutes. He was distracted and trying to make points that had little or nothing to do with the case as a whole. Really, it was difficult to make sense of and to follow it. It seemed as if Ronnie believed that he was the victim of some sort of conspiracy. When Ronnie appeared in front of the jury, the first thing he did was shout at them that he had evidence that proved that there was corruption. Other claims brought forward by Ronnie included that law enforcement had tampered with evidence and that there was a missing 911 call. Also, that he was acting in self-defense, and he said, "I am asserting justifiable homicide because I acted in self-defense and moved to protect myself and my children from Kenyatta Barron." Ronnie even had the nerve to argue that his fighting spirit is what kept Ron Nivea alive when she was born with those severe health conditions.
This is what the evidence will show. When my daughter was born, it was me who gave the command, the final command to keep her alive when she was on life support. When she was born, 2 pounds, 2 ounces, and couldn't breathe on her own, it was me who fought to keep her alive. But all of a sudden, I just want to take her life for no reason.
And after Ronnie tried to present himself as a loving and caring father, the prosecution presented Ronnie to the jury as an aggressive serial killer. On the second day of the trial, a pivotal moment occurred when the state attorney presented a broken shotgun as evidence, alleging that it had been used by Ronnie to fatally harm Kenyatta. The weapon, which was a crucial piece of the prosecution's case, held very high symbolic weight in the courtroom. However, Ronnie expressed that he wanted to hold the gun in his hands, perhaps in an attempt to exert control or to present his own perspective. Despite his request, both the prosecutor and the judge stood firm, refusing to allow Ronnie to handle the firearm directly. And of course, Ronnie did not like that answer. During the course of the trial, the testimonies of several first responders shed light on the harrowing scenes that they encountered on that fateful night. One such witness, Donald Foster, a firefighter who had bravely battled the flames engulfing Kenyatta's home, recounted his experience to the jurors. Donald vividly described how the floor was so slick with blood, causing him to slip as he searched for Ronnie's daughter amidst the chaos. He talked about how everything in the house was on fire and visibility was very low. He stated that he crawled through the back of the house until he discovered her. After successfully carrying her to safety and laying her in the front yard, he saw that her injuries had rendered her unrecognizable. Overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation and the weight of the moment, Donald embraced a fellow firefighter and cried.
And I don't remember if it was a deputy or a bystander came by and said that there's another child inside the house.
Foster entered the home.
I could see a faint orange glow somewhat off to my left.
And described a nightmarish scene.
And I realized that the floor was covered in blood.
In heavy smoke, he crawled to a back bedroom.
Everything in the room was on fire, so clothes, wall, ceiling. Once again, visibility was limited.
And in the middle of the flames, found what he was looking for.
I thought I had found a patient.
He and another firefighter took the little girl outside, but it was too late.
What did you do then?
Hugged my other firefighter and cried, to be honest with you.
The media attention surrounding this case intensified exponentially due to a particularly dramatic and very unsettling moment during the trial. Ronnie, representing himself, chose to cross-examine his own son, little Ronnie, who was just 11 years old at the time. This unprecedented and emotionally charged act obviously captured public interest and sparked widespread outrage. Why in the world should little Ronnie have to face his attacker and the murderer of his mother and sister? Little Ronnie had bravely testified as a crucial witness for the prosecution, all with his service dog next to him, providing first-hand accounts of the tragic events that he endured, including the deaths of his mother and sister, as well as his own horrific experience. And of course, the deeply unsettling nature of this confrontation gripped the media's attention. Little Ronnie testified that he had seen his mom and dad arguing about religion. Ronnie wanted Kenyatta to convert to Islam, but she refused to do so. Ronnie was holding his shotgun during this exchange. She then ran to Ronivia's bedroom to hide in the closet. Ronnie told little Ronnie to walk around and say Allah Akbar, and also told him to kill his mother. Ronnie then forced little Ronnie to hold his shotgun with him while he fired it. However, it's unclear whether the bullet they fired actually hit Kenyatta or if she was shot at after that. The fight continued until Kenyatta escaped and ran outside to a neighbor's driveway where Ronnie ran after her. He shot her, striking her in the arm before he severely beat her with the butt of the gun, leaving her to die in the driveway. He went into the garage then, and he picked up a hatchet, and then he made his way to his daughter's room. Little Ronnie said that Ronnie grabbed her from her bed and dragged her to Kenyatta's room, where little Ronnie watched as his father struck his sister in the back of the head, her back, her neck and face area, and just continued to do this all with the hatchet. He then watched as he lit a tissue on fire to burn her body. Ronnie then grabbed little Ronnie and held him down to the floor with a foot on his back as he tried to light little Ronnie on fire with a tissue as well. Little Ronnie managed to get away and ran toward the kitchen. That is where Ronnie grabbed a kitchen knife and repeatedly stabbed his son in his abdomen. The boy stated that he later heard noises and saw flashes of light in front of the house, so he pulled himself up and walked out the front door where he was met by the officers. During Ronnie's cross-examination, he spent the time questioning little Ronnie's accuracy and truthfulness of his recollection. And actually, little Ronnie modified his initial statement while his father was questioning him, stating that he did not see his father kill his mother or sister. But before you start questioning too much on that, it's important to remember that this is a child who is facing the man who brutally killed his family and his father. It's totally possible that little Ronnie was very intimidated and absolutely fearful of his overly aggressive dad. However, when Ronnie asked little Ronnie if he hurt him that night, defying any attempts to coerce or intimidate him, little Ronnie replied, "Yes, you stabbed me."
We're starting first here at 6 with this boy's act of bravery after surviving the unthinkable.
I just saw my dad holding a shotgun and my mom, and mom screaming at him.
That little boy testifying at his father's murder trial. He's the son of Ronnie O'Neill, his father on trial for the murder of the boy's mother and sister, and also for trying to kill Ronnie, allegedly. Now, because he's representing himself, this creates the unusual scenario of the father cross-examining, questioning his own son. The man is accused of trying to kill him, and now he is basically questioning his son's testimony. Fox 13's Aaron Mesmer is live at the courthouse in Hillsborough County. Aaron, even separated by video screen because the boy is in a remote location, this had to take incredible courage by this now 11-year-old boy.
Yeah, Chris, he was incredibly brave. He showed unbelievable composure in that remote location as he gave his testimony this morning, followed and had to describe all of these horrific events that occurred that evening. What you were about to hear is part of little Ronnie's testimony. He's 11 years old now, followed by some of the cross-examination that he experienced with his father, who, as you said, is representing himself. This was the first time that they have seen each other and spoken to each other since that the attack on March 2018.
State, you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I just saw my dad holding a shotgun and my mom, and Mom screaming at him.
And your father had a shotgun. What happened next? What did he do?
My mom ran in my sister's room. My mom ran in my sister's room and terrified into the closet. And then my dad said, come in here and come kill the B-word.
Did you hear any shots from the shotgun before that?
Yes.
How many times?
One.
Was there a time when your mother was able to get out of the closet?
She was like stumbling outside, and then I just saw my dad chase her.
What do you remember happening next?
My dad told me to walk around and say like some words.
And do you remember what words your father told you to say?
Allah Akbar.
Allahu Akbar?
Yes.
Did he do something to your sister?
Yes, he hit her with an axe. And then he went in the garage, I followed him. He put me on the ground, and then he had his foot on top. I was laying on my stomach, he had his foot on top of me, and he was holding me down. And he was lighting a match.
Mr. O'Neill, any questions?
How you doing, Ronnie?
Good.
It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Did you see me shoot your mom?
No.
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
Another key witness to take the stand was Detective Tom Dirks, the lead detective. Upon cross-examination, it seemed Ronnie's questions didn't go as planned.
Can you draw any conclusions that I committed any murder in this case?
Yes, that's why I arrested you.
Did you say that I didn't kill Kenyatta Barron in self-defense?
I'm not going to say that, no. I arrested you for her murder.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ronnie then had the opportunity to call his own witness to the stand. This time, it was a neighbor who had witnessed what happened outside that night through a bedroom window. He also called the mother of his youngest child. His third and final witness was a Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputy who pulled the 911 dispatch records but did not review them. Throughout the entire trial, Ronnie seemed to focus heavily on cell phone records and tried to convey that a 911 call he made was missing. Prosecutors began their closing argument the same way they began their opening remarks, with the 911 call from Kenyatta as she pleaded and begged for her life. Prosecutors said that by then she had already been shot, and while the recording continued, Ronnie could be heard beating her with the shotgun. Like his opening statement, Ronnie yelled as he spoke to jurors, telling them that his son's statements were inconsistent, and he believed his son was likely coached by the Hillsborough County detective.
Mr. O'Neill, you need to speak audibly so that the jury can hear what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am. I haven't begun yet. I was talking to my father.
He showed you a fraudulent recording where they allege that I beat Kenyatta Barron to death. He talked about Mr. Khalil Brown, my neighbor who stayed across the street. But if Mr. Khalil Brown was a help to them proving me guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, they would have called Mr. Khalil Brown. But I called Mr. Khalil Brown to be a witness for me. And I didn't ask him to lie about one thing that he saw that night. I to tell the jury exactly what he saw that night. And you have to ask yourself why that is. Because he's playing a fraudulent damn recording of me beating Kenyatta Barron 15 damn times when that did not happen. And like I told you earlier, you will know the truth, whether in this trial or the next one. Better believe it. If you think I'm here to play around with y'all, God damn it, I'm not.
All right, Mr. O'Neill, please stop using swearing language. It's not appropriate in a closing argument.
Now, he played a recording that was sped up. Why didn't you play the regular recording that people can understand what the call was saying?
Objection to the defendant asking me questions, Your Honor.
I'm going to sustain
I'm talking to
okay.
people.
Mr. O'Neill, listen, please just keep in mind this is not personal towards the prosecutors. Please keep your comments directed towards the evidence and the law. Thank you.
Yeah. All these objections now. I know for a fact Kenyatta Barron's recording from her phone did not record calls sped up like that.
I'm going to object now. He's talking about facts, not in evidence of what he knows.
Again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you were instructed, the closing arguments are just that. They're not the evidence or the instruction on the law. It's just what the parties believe the evidence shows or does not show. All right? Thank you.
You heard Mr. Khalil Brown. You've been hearing me for 2 weeks now telling you that they committed criminal acts against me with the 911 calls and that fraudulent video that they just showed y'all. Now, I'm going to prove it to you. You heard Khalil Brown. He said that he was actually sure that I only hit Kenyatta Barron 3 times. You heard. I called him to tell you that. I ain't running from nothing. They didn't call Khalil Brown to tell you that. I did. You have to ask yourself why that is. Because I want you to know the actual facts. I did kill Kenyatta Barron. But I want you to tell it like it is if you're going to tell it.
Ronnie admitted to killing Kenyatta in self-defense while delivering his closing argument. The judge reprimanded Ronnie several times for foul language and his manner of addressing the prosecution during his closing argument. The jury was able to witness a range of raw and human emotions expressed by Ronnie throughout this entire process, as well as just how aggressive he can really be. Shortly after Ronnie made his closing statement, the jury started deliberations. On June 21st, 2021, after 4 hours of deliberations, they found him guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. He was also found guilty of arson, 2 counts of aggravated physically hurting a child, and resisting an officer without violence. Ronnie sat quietly, with no reaction, as the jury foreman read his fate.
State of Florida versus Ronnie O'Neill III, case number 2018 CF 004019, verdict form, trial division 1. We, the jury, find as follows as the count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged. The defendant did actually possess and discharge a firearm causing death. We, the jury, find as follows as the count 2 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder, premeditated murder, and felony murder. The defendant carried, displayed, used, threatened to use, or attempted to use a weapon. We, the jury, find as follows. To count 3 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of attempted first-degree murder as charged. The defendant carried, displayed, used, threatened to use, or attempted to use a weapon. We, the jury, find as follows. To count 4 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of arson of a dwelling as charged. We, the jury, find as follows. To count 5 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged. We, the jury, find as follows. To count 6 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged. We, the jury, find as follows. To count 7 of the charge, the defendant is guilty of resisting an officer without violence as charged. So say we all, dated this 21st day of June 2021.
The next portion of the trial was the penalty phase, as Ronnie was also facing the death penalty. During a prior hearing in May, Ronnie received a stern warning from the judge regarding the potential ramifications of self-representation in a case that could potentially lead to the death penalty. Ronnie nonchalantly expressed his willingness to accept such a sentence and even compared himself to the late rapper Notorious B.I.G. When the judge pointed out the tragic reality of Biggie's murder, Ronnie shockingly retorted, stating, "Just like I'm going to be, right? I was murdered a couple of times already before, so I'm cool with being murdered again and coming back like B.I.G. Okay, sounds a little delusional, but okay. The trial was a bit of a mess. However, this is how our justice system and our American rights work. If you have a defendant who wants to represent himself, then he gets to do so, and he absolutely has the right to do it. However, despite his attempts to persuade the jury during the trial, Ronnie chose not to testify in his own defense. He spent his entire trial trying to persuade the jury. However, when it came time for his opportunity to tell his story, he declined to do so. It's likely that he was intimidated by the possibility of being cross-examined by the state. But ultimately, I think that the choice to not testify bolsters the finding of the judge that he knows exactly what he's doing. He knew that if he did not testify, that they wouldn't be able to ask him questions. The judge strongly recommended him to allow his standby counsel to represent him in this next portion of the trial.
So, Mr. O'Neill, now that you have been found guilty of first-degree murder, we now go into penalty phase. And as you are aware, it gets no more serious for any defendant in any criminal courtroom in this country than what you are facing now. I respect the fact that you chose to represent yourself, and I have to tell you, I think in another lifetime, you would have been an excellent lawyer. I really think that. You speak with great passion. I understood exactly the points you were making. I knew what you were attempting to get across in your opening statement, your cross-examination of the state witnesses, the direct examination of your witnesses, and your closing argument. Ultimately, your arguments were not persuasive to the jury, but nonetheless, I was able to follow exactly what you were trying to accomplish. However, as we move into penalty phase, I'm really going to strongly encourage you to consider allowing counsel to now step in and represent you. This is a much more specialized and rare area of the law that very few practitioners really practice in, as far as truly understanding the aggravating factors the state has to establish, and now you would have a burden of proof with regards to the mitigators, whether they're statutory or non-statutory. You've got to come up with proof by greater weight of the evidence that the mitigators actually apply. And you would have to come up with not just applicable statutory mitigators, but any applicable non-statutory mitigators. And I'm quite confident that your standby counsel would have a much better grasp on what those potential non-statutory mitigators would be.
As the trial reached its sentencing phase on Wednesday, June 23rd, the prosecution presented a powerful plea to the jury, urging them to carefully contemplate the unimaginable violence and the devastation brought by Ronnie upon his own family. They expressed the gravity of the crimes committed, and the prosecution requested the death penalty as the appropriate punishment in this case. Under Florida law, a death sentence requires a unanimous decision from the jury. Failure to reach a unanimous verdict would result in life without parole. In a surprising turn of events, Ronnie opted to have his court-appointed public defender take charge during the sentencing phase. His attorney advocated for a life sentence, highlighting testimonies from Ronnie's family members that shed light on the profound mental and physical mistreatment that he endured during his upbringing. A psychologist further testified to the presence of post-traumatic stress disorder and delusional disorder in Ronnie's mental health profile. Notably, Ronnie's mother took the stand, recounting the harrowing experience of her son barely surviving a drive-by shooting just a few months prior to the double murder. After being given a chance to address the court before his sentencing, Ronnie expressed no remorse for the murder of his child or the mother of his child.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
Mr. O'Neill, listen, stop. Listen to me. You're not going to raise your voice again.
I'm not going to raise my voice again. I'm not.
I will have you removed from this courtroom. I can sentence you without you being present.
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't conduct yourself.
Understand, Your Honor.
Thank you.
But I will say, I'm sorry for your loss.
After about 3 hours of deliberations, the jury handed down their sentencing recommendation. Ronnie will spend life in prison without parole for the brutal murders of Kenyatta and his daughter, Ronivia, and for the attempted murder of little Ronnie. During the sentencing hearing, Judge Michelle Cisco stated the following.
19 years I've been at this job. I've seen human beings killed at the hands of others in every way imaginable. You name it, I've seen it. Shootings, stabbings, drownings, suffocatings, blown apart by cars, some DUI manslaughter cases, horrible things. This is the worst case I have ever seen as far as the facts go. When the person from fire department, when he testified, and when he said that he retrieved the body of Ronivia O'Neill from the home, and all he could do was sob. It took every ounce I had not to start sobbing too. Because there is no way any person with any feeling could have witnessed or seen the photos of what occurred that night and not be haunted for the rest of your life. I know I will be. For the rest of my life, I'll be haunted by what I saw as far as the evidence and just the abject cruelty of it all. The abject cruelty. And all I could think about, because I knew that Miss Barron was not with you romantically at the time. And I knew that she just out of the goodness of her heart let you come stay with her. And it is beyond tragic that that critical decision ended in so much horror for her and for her children. It is unspeakably cruel what happened as a result of that one decision. The way that Ms. Barron died was horrific, and that 911 call, which captured truly all of it. You heard, and everyone who's heard that 911 call heard a death scream. If anybody ever wants to know what it sounds like before a human being dies, knowing that their death is imminent, that's exactly what it is. That was a death scream.
We're going to see if it's true.
But what happened to little Ronivia and to little Ronnie, but I'm going to focus on Ronivia because she was special. And you can tell Miss Barron had done everything she could to create a beautiful home for her family. I noticed that the Ronivia's bedroom, before you set it on fire, you could tell she tried so hard to make her feel like a princess. Kenyatta did everything she could. And I noticed too in the kitchen, on the refrigerator, she put up magnets that said faith, love, family, hope. And then you know what else happened to that refrigerator during that night? It got splattered with blood all over it due to what happened. Little Ronivia, she couldn't scream, She couldn't run away. And she witnessed what you did to her mother, as far as shooting her mother in the arm with the gunshot. She knew. And the horror that child suffered. And she already had a life where she was born with challenges regarding her physical and her mental disabilities. But the pain and suffering that she suffered that night at your hands, unspeakable, absolutely unspeakable. And at the moment, that first time you struck her with that hatchet, and little Ronnie testified that all he could see was tears coming out of his sister's face. At that moment, that child knew. She knew she was being betrayed in the cruelest, most tragic and sorrowful way that a child could ever be betrayed. She was being betrayed by her parent, the one person that should be there to protect their children and love them and keep them from harm. And that was the last thing that child felt before she passed on from this earth, was your utter, cruel betrayal to her. And I read somewhere, and I don't know if it's true or not, I have no idea, but I read somewhere that souls pick their lives, and that they know exactly how difficult their lives are going to be before they enter into this world. And I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, Ronnie O'Neal is one of the bravest souls I have ever come across in my 54 years on this planet. One of the bravest ever, ever, because she suffered so traumatically.
In the midst of the horrible case surrounding little Ronnie, a glimmer of hope emerged through the compassion and care of Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Detective Mike Blair. Detective Blair was one of the officers who responded to the scene that night and was heavily affected by the gravity of the situation. Detective Blair had brought Ronnie some gifts from his connections with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers while he was recovering in the hospital. During his stay, little Ronnie made a simple request that touched Detective Blair's heart deeply. He asked if they could watch a movie together. Though duty called him back to work, Detective Blair couldn't shake off little Ronnie's request. He shared the request with his wife, Danielle, who selflessly agreed to forego their planned date night in order to spend time with little Ronnie and watch a movie with him. Feeling a strong connection and an urge to help, the Blairs knew that they wanted little Ronnie to be a part of their family. Though he was initially living with other family members under the supervision of a court-appointed guardian, circumstances in that environment led the Blairs to offer their support and their care. The phone call finally came, and it was an opportunity for Detective Blair to bring little Ronnie into their family. With 5 other children of their own, the Blairs embraced Ronnie as a cherished member of their household. It is so unbelievably giving and just kind and generous and thoughtful, and it's like so rarely do we hear of victims in these cases who survive going to loved ones and going to safe new family homes. We usually hear the opposite, that they get tormented all over again. So this was a huge deal. During the trial, this same detective testified in the case, and when it came to Ronnie having the opportunity to cross-examine him, he thanked Detective Blair for all that he had done.
In cross-examination, O'Neal made just one statement.
Thank you, sir, for all that you've done. I mean that from the bottom of my heart to the top of my head. No further questions, John.
A family mantra was adopted by the Blairs, with little Ronnie repeating the empowering words to himself during moments of stress. I am safe, I am loved, and I am part of this family. Through the compassion and dedication of Detective Mike Blair and his family, Ronnie found a new home filled with love, support, and the promise of a brighter future, which, if that doesn't make you cry, guys, I don't know what will. It just gives me the chills, and it is, like, again, one of the few happy endings that we ever hear in cases like this. But that still doesn't take away from everything that little Ronnie experienced and endured at the hands of his own father. Not only the personal betrayal of your father attacking you, but witnessing him brutally murder your mother and your sister in such a callous and gruesome way with a freaking hatchet. How do you come back from that, regardless what environment you're put in? How do you heal from that, and how do you get closure and grieve, especially at such a young age? I'm curious to know your thoughts on this case. Why do you think Ronnie chose to cross-examine his own son and defend himself? What do you make of everything? What do you make of him wanting to attack his family? Was it because he was so set on having the Islam faith in their family that he was just triggered by that and became enraged? Or was this like Ronnie's mother indicated? Was this some sort of PTSD incident after that drive-by shooting that had happened months earlier? I'm leaning more towards a callous, brutal killer, but what do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for tuning in with me today, guys. I hope you appreciated the case coverage. Please don't forget to show support for the channel by taking a quick second, hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you can make sure you're notified of new case videos as I post them. All right, guys, thanks again, and until the next one, stay safe.